It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Carlo Biasucci. He is a practicing dentist, and let me see if I can get this right. Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada, which is a sister city on the U.S.-Canadian border with Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, correct?
You got it.
And most notably has tripled his practice in 3 years to a value of $8.2 million. But even more interestingly, has done this while reducing his time in the practice every year. The practice has 9 dentists, 30 staff members, and sees over 175 new patients each month consistently for 3 years. Presently, he's treating patients between 5 and 7 days each month. He has removed dependence on him and shifted the running of the practice to his team, all while increasing the income from practice. Now, this wasn't a straight line. Dr. Carlo suffered an injury in late 2012 that nearly ended his life, and as his doctors told him, would end his career in dentistry. After 6 months out of practice and getting back on the right side of things, he began his journey in quest for knowledge that allowed him to grow a very frustrating $2 million practice into a practice valued at $8 million in just 3 years. He documented every step, tested, and turned it into a complete system that the practice runs on, and also has taken this model into the practice of dentists across North America under the banner of Elite Practice. And that website is theelitepractice.com, a complete practice growth partner. Today's interview will, I think, suggest new possibilities for you, your success, your family, and your future. Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before I ask your first question, I want to tell you, when I moved out here in 1987, there was like a 80-year-old German lady, and she escaped Nazism, and she came over here before Adolf ruined everything. And when she got here, the Americans didn't recognize her license. And I understand, because America's the home of, Ford and Chrysler, and Germans are known for, Mercedes and Porsche and Audi. So, of course, they couldn't accept their dental license. And she was so sad, and she didn't have the money or time to go back to dental school to get an American license. And she went and got a lawyer, and the lawyer said, well, you know what? You can't practice dentistry, but what's cool is you can own a dental practice. So that forced her to just work on the business instead of working in the business, just drilling, filling, billing 40 hours a week for 40 years. And by the time I hooked up with her, she had 4 offices in Phoenix, north, south, east, west. Each one was doing $2.5 million. She was doing $10 million. And she told me that the worst thing that ever happened to her professionally turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And now here you had the same fate. Where tell us about your injury that almost cost you your life, and then the make lemon out of lemonades forced you that now you can only work on the business instead of in the business. What happened to you? What was your injury?
Yeah, that story is very interesting. So for myself, my wife and I were on vacation. Actually, we went scuba diving. We love to do this. At least a couple times a quarter, we'd get out somewhere in the Caribbean. And we were on our first dive of the week. And that was the end of it. We had a normal dive profile. Everything was normal. But when we came up, I was a little lightheaded, but we got back to our condo in Grand Cayman, and she tells me, I don't remember it. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for about 2 hours, and I thought, well, okay, it's not too bad. When I went to bed and I woke up and my body was numb, so I got myself to the hospital, and I spent the rest of the week there. Not the worst place in the Caribbean to end up in the hospital. They do a nice job. The doctors are great. But the first guy I talked to said, you're like this close. It's a coin toss. You're right on the razor's edge of it. You could have killed you underwater, or you could be where you are right now, which is, looks like severe concussion kind of range in terms of how this is going to play out for you, but we don't know. We'll just see what happens. So I spent the entire week in and out of the hyperbaric chamber, which is rather boring. And then back in Toronto, when we finally got back to Canada a week later, I did the same thing for about 6 weeks on and off. I actually 6 weeks straight, twice a day in a hyperbaric chamber. And, as you mentioned with the German lady, it's, at the time when you're going through that, it seems like, my God, like this is crazy. I had no, it's like if you break your leg, 6-8 weeks I'll be back in the game. This was 6-8 weeks in, and I had no prospect of returning to practice. And the doctors were telling me, well, you may have to look at something else. And for me at that time, it was not really a great option. I mean, I was only 6-7 years into practice. We had just built a brand new practice. We were just, getting ready to make a run. And that was the time when I just basically, I stood back and I said, just use this as an opportunity and reevaluate, because I wasn't really happy with that $2.4 million practice, as you mentioned, when that point where it's just conventionally successful by anyone's standards. I found it incredibly frustrating. I hated it. I was just running, morning to night, all kinds of hours, and just doing everything I could to grow the business. But it was frustrating. I I couldn't run any faster on that treadmill to get any more progress. And so taking that forced step back is what allowed me to just get that perspective that you just don't get any other way. And that set me on a totally different path. And so that's sort of the story as to what the catalyst was in terms of getting me, from that frustrated in practice and then knocking me down for a little while to then get back up and make another run.
Well, the E-Myth was one of the best books ever written, and it was basically asking, why do franchises like McDonald's have like a 98% success rate, and how come when they go open up next to go to some small town in the 50s and the 60s and set up next to a hamburger stand that's been there for 50 years. And the E-Myth concluded that the reason franchises were so successful is because they had a team that just focused on the business, whereas everyone they were competing against worked all day in the business making hamburgers, fries, and Cokes. And it's amazing. The S&P 500, you would think that's the ultimate competition. And the heavyweights used to spend 33 years on the S&P 500, and now it's down to 14 years. I mean, people don't realize that the S&P 500 in 1950, 88% of those companies were gone by today, and the ones that were at the year 2000, this is now 2018, and half of those companies are gone. And these are people that are ran by professional CEOs and MBAs and lawyers, and they have the best business. So then you have a dentist, and it's so it's so crazy, because not only do you have to learn root canals, fillings, crowns, bleaching, bonding, veneers, Invisalign, implants, you got to understand HR and marketing and taxes. And I love your website, because if you go to theelitepractice.com, you ask basically what, he says, where are you now? Number one, click here if I'm frustrated with my practice. Number two, my profit is shrinking. Number three, I want more new patients. And 4, I'm already very successful. What are you seeing out there in the field? Who's clicking theelitepractice.com, and who's reading your book? Can you send me the Amazon link to his book? Is it on Amazon?
Yep.
Yeah.
They can get it. You can get it for free on our website.
Oh, you can get the book for free on your website? Okay, well then we'll do that. So who's calling you, and what problems are you seeing in the real world today? And also, what percent of your business is Canadian versus US?
Okay. Yeah, so get back to the initial growth of our practice post-injury. When I was off, the number one thing that I discovered is I had no idea about business. And we know this. I mean, we know that we're not well-trained coming out of dental school, but I didn't realize how big the gap was. So I spent all of that time off, which is, in total is about 6 months, just studying everything that the best businesses out there do, as you alluded to McDonald's and such. Learning about systems, leadership, all the things that you actually need in order to grow a practice. So who's calling us is, we're seeing newer dentists who want to buy a practice and are looking at this as, I don't want to bite off something more than I can chew, and really just have no idea what it looks like, because they understand the dental school side of it, that initial introduction as an associate. But even with my own associates, they come to our office, and within a few months they feel like this doesn't look that hard. And then I say, okay, well, let's look under the hood now. And it's like, wow, okay, that's what it takes. So new dentist who wants to own a practice, and there are many who want to get into that game. So what exactly should I be doing in terms of leadership systems, training, marketing? How do I compete in the marketplace? Established dentists who just want to grow. I want to double my practice. The most common thing is I'm at $1.5 million. I want to go to 3 or 4. And then we're finding quite a few folks who are in their 50s, they want to retire in 5 years. How can I do what you did? How did you triple your practice? I want to get maximum value before I sell. So we're finding all 3 of those areas. In terms of Canada, US, we're about equal. Yes, there's quite a bit on both sides of the border.
So to get the book, you go and you enter your first name, your email address, and then you're going to email them the book?
On the website, there should be... just click on the link, and it'll take you to a form that effectively just asks you to tell us where to ship it to.
Huh, okay.
Right at the top of the page, it just says claim your copy.
Yeah, I'm on the iPhone smartphone site, not the desktop.
Okay, yeah, just click on your claim your copy, and then the next page, if you click on claim my free copy, it'll just get you to input some information, first name, last name, and then your shipping info, and that should get you a book in your hands within a week or so.
So what do you mean when you talk about the mindset shift from new dentist to conventionally successful to self-operating practice?
Yeah, good question. So new dentist, it's all about, I want to make some money. I want to pay off my debt. I want to, grow a practice. Really have no idea where we're going. We wanted to get, when I was in that position, I just wanted to get to what I thought was conventionally successful, which is what I saw as a kid looking at my dentist and looking out, laterally at the time. And I got to that point at the 2.5 million mark where the practice was successful. Everything, from the outside looked great, except I was running ragged, and I had a team that was, I had to put everything on my shoulders and carry the business every day, versus self-operating practice where effectively the team runs the show. And that's a very different game. First of all, in terms of value of your practice, so that any business that the team runs the business, so that it's less reliant on the owner, is substantially orders of magnitude more valuable. So if you want to sell a practice, the first thing I would do is try to remove yourself as the linchpin. If in my position now, working 5 days a week, the practice is substantially more valuable than if I were required to be here every day. So that's, building that self-operating side of it. So the mindset shift is required to realize that, it doesn't all have to go through your hands. A lot of dentists, I've shared this, this sort of path in their life where they thought they were the only person that can go to Staples to get stationery, the only person that can go to Costco to get toilet paper, realizing that your team can do just about everything that you need to do to run the practice, and often better than you can. Getting that team to take the load off your shoulders is effectively what gets rid of the stress in practice. So you could just mostly focus on treating patients and leading the team. So I want, in the ideal state, the dentist becomes the leader of a team whose job it is to grow more leaders, not the manager whose job it is to tie everyone's shoes. And that's the mindset shift.
In the last 7 years alone, the S&P 500 has shedded Eastman Kodak, National Semiconductor, Sprint, U.S. Steel, Dell, even the New York Times. And now there's these new companies that the list includes, Facebook, PayPal, Level 3 Communications, Under Armour, Seagate Technology, Netflix. In Canada, where you live, you see large group DSOs coming out, dental services, dental support organizations. Who's the largest DSO in Canada?
Right now, Dental Corp.
Dental Corp. And I notice in your business model, you have 9 associate dentists working for you, correct?
Yeah.
So so we're in, I know you can't predict the future, but let's go out 15 years. And what's sad, in 15 years, you won't even be as old as me. You just ruined my day. And you're 39 and I'm 56, but let's go out 15 years. Is there a place for solo, or is the office going to be a group practice with like 9 to get some scales of economy so you have enough revenue coming in where you can support a full-time office manager, maybe a marketing director, maybe an HR director, maybe an accounting director? And where do you see the DSOs like Dental Corp in the Canadian market? I mean, how big do you think they're going to get?
And so right now, I think they're at about 6-7% of the Canadian market, which is less than the U.S. market, I know, substantially. But they are making headway. I think Dental Corp announced maybe 6-8 months ago $1 billion in financing. One of the other corps has done similar in terms of financing. So they've got tons of backing. And the cool thing is, see, these guys are in hardcore acquisition mode, and they're just buying up everything. But what they're not doing is actually taking each of those businesses, each of those practices that they're buying, and making them to be any better than they are. So what you've got is a ton of room for practices like this size. You know, we've got a few dentists together. I mean, solo, yes, I think solo still competes. I don't think solo is going away. It's just going to be harder. The group practice is going to have an easier time from economies of scale, from being able to cover market hours, to be able to offer more services under one roof, have that ability to have a significant marketing presence. But I don't think that it's a requirement. The DSOs, the management organizations, they're not going to be able to produce the same experience that can be produced with a lead dentist who's fully engaged, who's financially motivated to run the best business that he can or she can, from a service level, from a relationship level, all those things that matter on retention and referrals, they can't duplicate it at the same level. I mean, yes, they have great management teams, they have excellent leadership, they have a lot of pieces in play, but when it comes down to the practice, I don't see that translating. I mean, everybody can tell you that there's a lot of their patients come from the DSO practice across the road because of relationship experiences and such. So there's a lot of room if the dentist gets the experience right and the relationships right.
And is Dow, is the DSO Dental Corp, are they publicly traded?
No.
Isn't that the ultimate red flag? I mean, why is it? I mean, you say they're getting a line of credit, so they're going and buying up all these practices, and I get that. I mean, the U.S. stock market. I mean, we're sitting here right now at after Thanksgiving, so we're at November 26th, and the stock market has literally been flat for the entire year, so there's no gains, and a lot of people think it could be overvalued. So they look at these dental offices where a lot of these dentists, have these high profit margins. So it's easy to get a line of credit to go buy a bunch of dental offices, but you believe they're not adding value to the offices they're buying, that they're just buying them, that they're not actually fixing them up. Did I hear you right on that?
Yeah, well, what I see just from my own observation is, if they buy a practice at a premium, which is what's happening right now, I think it's flattened out a little bit. I don't think they're going as crazy on the premiums that they were buying at. However, still, it's a seller's market in Canada, so they're still paying more than market rate. And at that, if there's a shift in leadership, there's a shift. So if you take a lead dentist who's grown a practice substantially, and the team follows them, the patients love that person, and there's this, that is a leader who has grown leaders who are loyal to them, and you take that person out, or you neuter the dog, so to speak, you take away their effectiveness as a leader by bringing in a corporate ownership structure, that's going to wash down the practice to some degree. So you take that profitability and you bring it down a little. I don't see that. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're not publicly traded. I mean, you're buying a $3 or $4 million practice, but you're adding that much in debt, and the growth isn't there. So I don't think that's attractive from an investor's perspective.
Absolutely. But by the time they're doing $100 million in sales or revenue, they have $100 million of debt. I mean, you're from Canada. My favorite shark on Shark Tank is Mr. Wonderful. He's bald. He's beautiful. He's Canadian. I mean, you couldn't get any of these DSOs past Mr. Wonderful. He'd want to loan you $1 million, and he'd expect you to build a dental office or buy a dental office and then pay his $1 million back while the sales goes from $1 million to $2 million, and it grows in profit to $4 million to $8 million and $10 million. But that's not what you'd be saying to Mr. Wonderful. You'd say, well, I want to borrow $1 million to buy this office. Okay, then what? Well, I want to come back next week, borrow another $1 million, buy another $1 million. And we're going to do this, and 100 weeks from now, we're going to have 100 offices doing $100 million a year, and we're going to be $100 million in debt. Mr. Wonderful would only say one thing. What would he say? What would he say?
Where's the cash flow in this deal?
No, he'd say, you are dead to me. You are dead to me. Get out of here. I mean, it wouldn't fly on Shark Tank, and nobody in NASDAQ has touched any of these things, yet you can get something completely useless and insane like Snapchat to go public. I mean, how does society need Snapchat? And that can go public, but some dental services corporation that owns 100, 500, or damn near 1,000 dental offices can't go public. If that isn't the largest red flag, I don't know who would be. So are you friends with the CEO of Dental Corporation in Canada, Mr. Graham Lawrence Rosenberg, CPA?
I don't know him, no.
Any of the dentists like Dr. Andrew Melke. I'd love to get these guys on the show. And by the way, I want you guys to come on the show. I got an MBA. I love business. I mean, I'm not throwing anybody under a bus. I love DSOs because they provide jobs for all the graduates. And I have to tell you, as a dentist who's had associates who owns Today's Dental for 31 years, I don't want to hire a new grad. I mean, my God, they come out of school. It takes them an hour to do a MOD composite and the warranty redo rates. I mean, the last thing you want is some kid out of school to come in your practice. I mean, I've had this before where they come in and the first year they place 10 implants, and then over the next 5 years, I have to pay or have them redone, so nobody wants these new grads, and they have to just get out and learn. Like if you join a football team, you need to learn how to block and tackle and pass and receive. And when you come out of school, you need to learn how to do a filling and a crown, and it just takes a couple of years. Now you have 9 associates. Do you hire new grads?
We do, actually. I almost prefer new grads because I can get past the bad habits immediately. And we've got a training process whereby within 90 days, I can get them competent and I can get them really productive. So that's part of, that, again, everything that we talk about on the elite practice side in our programs is stuff that was built out of our practice. So, I need to get new grads. Where I live in Sault Ste. Marie, we're not exactly, this is a town of 70,000 people. The closest town of this size is 300 kilometers in any direction. So we're an isolated area. To get a experienced dentist up here is tough. New grads, I can get them, and I can keep them for 2 to 3 years max. So I got to get them here. I got to train them quick, and I got to get them productive, and I don't want to get stuck holding the bag when they leave. So we have an intensive process where we train them and get them up to speed fairly quickly. And, some of that's mentoring, some of that's over the shoulder. There's a whole process that we've built around it. But that's, as I said, these systems and processes are what we've turned into what we call the elite practice now. It's born out of how we did this.
Well, you said, so you're in a town of 70,000 people.
Yeah.
And you said you're 300 kilometers away from what big town?
Well, the next nearest town to us, heading towards Toronto, is called Sudbury. 100 and some thousand, but it's another small town.
And how far? You remember, you're talking to a lot of Americans. We only use metric when they're buying drugs and grams of heroin and cocaine. They never use it for 300 kilometers. What would that be? About 100 miles?
120, 130 miles. Yeah.
120 miles. Now I want to stop there. Do demographics matter? Do you think you're having more success because you're in that town of 70,000 and the closest town of about the same size over 120 miles away, versus do you think you could have pulled this off in downtown Toronto?
Yeah, definitely a different demographic between here and there, but we do have about 45 dentists in this town. So that does, there is competition, no question. But what's different between here and Toronto? So Toronto, you're like right in the downtown core, which that would be a tough start. What I'm hearing from dental suppliers is a new start downtown Toronto is a year to 2 years for a paycheck. So I wouldn't be trying to start there where you're one dentist to 500,000 people maximum. Maybe 800 is probably the reasonable number there. Here we're probably double that. But the difference is here in this kind of community, you're not getting great insurance plans. You're not getting high dental IQ, will pay my bills kind of patient. You're getting blue collar, some government services, government plans like a Medicaid equivalent, that sort of thing. So it's, you may have more patients, but you've got to churn more work in order to get the same buck at the end of the day. So I don't think it's a significant advantage.
Well, Henry Ford was the one, a lot of people don't remember the story, but when he started his car company, there were 86 car companies, but they were all making high-end luxury cars for rich millionaires, billionaires, kings and queens. And he said, if you focus on the rich classes, you will be poor and eat with the masses. And if you focus on the masses, you'll be so rich you'll eat with the classes. And he made a car for the working man. I mean, look at America in the airline industry. The number one airline is Southwest Airlines. They fly 27% of all seat miles. The biggest beast are for the middle class. Walmart, Costco. I mean, look at wine. Mr. Wonderful. I'll throw a dig at Mr. Wonderful, even though he's bald and beautiful. He's a big wine connoisseur. But who sells the most wine in the entire world is Costco. And they don't care about Mr. Wonderful's $100, 1,000 bottle. They don't care anything about that. Look at Budweiser. Their current commercial, it's a diss on kings and queens being all elitist. And they said, send them to the wine cellar. This beer is for the many, not for the few and the elite. So all the big money in the world is B2C products for the middle class. So if you want to set up a dental office, that's why when you come to Arizona, which, by the way, my town is 10% Canadians. I don't know if you know that or not. 10% of all the houses in Phoenix are owned by Canadians. They love this place. And now it's November 26th, so you can spot a Canadian at least a block away. You know why? Because yeah, it's flipping freezing out this morning. It's 59 degrees. I have sweats, a jacket, I'm in a hat. When I got in my car, I turned on my car seat. And when you see someone walking down and they're in shorts and flip-flops, you think, damn Canadians. They don't even know that 59 is freezing. But anyway, but you go to Scottsdale, where everybody thinks all the money is. And there's a dentist on every corner, and they're all trying to do lifestyles of the rich and famous. And then I look at all the dentists who are crushing it, and they're not in Scottsdale. They're in Phoenix. They're in Chandler. They're in Tempe, Queen Creek, Gilbert, Glendale, Peoria. They're the people that go after the working man. And nobody wants to lecture on that because it's not sexy. I mean, you'd rather go to a lecture that showed pictures of famous movie stars, doing before and after veneers and all that. But there ain't no movie stars in Chandler. There's none in Glendale. There's none in Peoria. It's just the working man. And those are where every dentist I know that's taken home $300 or $400 or $500 a year, they're always in the middle class. You talk about the 4 pillars of any successful practice. What are those 4 pillars?
Yeah, leadership, systems, training, and marketing.
Say that again. That was too fast for my walnut brain.
Leadership, systems, training, and marketing. And that's what our training platform, our entire program is built around. Can you
take a deep dive into each one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a really high level, leadership is, if the dentist becomes the leader of the practice and their job is to grow more leaders, to create a leadership structure in the practice, everybody has that 1 or 2 really go-to person in their office. And what I'm saying is if we create a structure whereby the dentist creates leadership and the leadership, their job is to build more leaders, then we build that practice and we level it up. And through strategic hiring, we can level up the entire practice, the entire team over a year or 2 to where the team is now fully capable of driving the practice. So from a leadership perspective, that's in a nutshell what we try to accomplish. Everybody has, I think, people that are far more capable than we give them credit for, we give them responsibility for. And yes, we all have our bottom players, but many of us have, on our teams, some people who can step up given the opportunity and the confidence and honestly the guidance to get there. So we create that leadership. Systems, effectively, as you said before, why are franchises so much more successful according to the eMyth folks? And really, if you have that systemized playbook, if you have excellent systems to run the business, and then you go out and you find the best people that you can find to run those systems, rather than relying on superstars, because honestly, McDonald's is not hiring superstars, they're hiring the best people they can find to run excellent systems. So as long as the systems are moving, they're consistent experience, it's a reliable product, it's give or take the same hamburger, whether it's in Rome or in Sault Ste. Marie, that's what we need to accomplish in our practices. So regardless of which hygienist someone sees in our practice, it should be exactly the same process, exactly the same feel, same relationship building, and so on. So systemization of every single operation. I used to joke, I had this one assistant, you probably all have this story, who was the only person who could set up a crown and bridge or a root canal for me because he was the only one who'd get it right. And now we're at the point where the next person who walks down the sidewalk in front of the office, literally, I could show them the system. Within 5 minutes, they could set up any procedure. That's the level of systemization that if you run at that level, it just takes all the stress out of practice, and you can really ramp up, you can do a ton more work, and it's a less stressful day for the doctor. With training, obviously, a consistent and strategic investment in training team. We have to level these people up. So you have a team, we don't invest any time in them. If you look at the most profitable businesses, they're the ones who are spending the most money on training their teams, on engaging those people. So if you can create an engaged team, people who are happy with what they do, they know what to do, they have a lot of support, they know they're constantly, even at this point, our practice is doing great. We still have monthly team meetings, we still have morning huddles, we still have weekly department meetings, and we don't skip any of that ever for any reason, because if you don't have that consistent push, everything over time will just degrade to chaos. So if you let everyone default to what they want to do, it'll be whatever's the least that they can get away with. So that continued push on training the systems is really important. And then marketing is, obviously that's one of the big keys. So what we do with our clients in our signature programs is, rather than just teach them about marketing, what to do, we actually teach them what to do, how to do it, and then we do it for them. So a lot of our programs are built around, here's exactly what we know works. We're testing it right now in our practice. Here are the numbers we're getting. Here are the numbers clients are getting. Here's it done for you. That's one of the keys, because really to get good at that, it takes time. And quite honestly, a lot of dentists don't even want to talk about marketing because it's, why should I have to market? I'm good at what I do, right?
Well, let's go through. I want to go through those 4 with some follow-up questions. When you go to leadership, the natural selection for dentists, physicians, and lawyers are the people that came out of college with the highest GPAs. So they're usually introvert people that lived in a library. Are you born a leader? Do you think the average dentist is born a leader, and is it something you're born with, or can it be trained? Because I know people don't like to talk about genetics, the difference between boys and girls, but even just this Thanksgiving, I was sitting out there in my house amazed. I grew up with 5 sisters, and then I had 4 sons, and now I got a whole bunch of grandchildren. And I noticed on Thanksgiving Day, out on the in the backyard where the playhouse is, right? The girls would all go in and out of the playhouse through the door, and they were all playing inside the house. The boys only entered the playhouse by climbing in the window, and at any given time, one of the boys was on the top of the roof, and of course, one of them slipped and fell down and cried. And you look at the 30,000 fatalities a year from accidents in the United States, they're almost all males. So boys are born different than girls, in my opinion. I know that's a sexist statement, but I always look at leadership and think, when I see these amazing dentists that are leaders, I always wonder, were they born that way? Or do you think you can be trained and educated to become a leader?
Yeah, I think, maybe if there's a genetic factor, it's a jump start at best. But absolutely, to go way back for me, I was literally the shyest kid ever growing up. I mean, in fact, I cried the entire first day of school, the entire day. Okay, and there are a lot of people in this town that still talk about that. Okay, so and I was not the person who was going to get up in front of a room of people and talk about anything. I mean, that was the last thing I would have done. So, but over time, out of necessity, if you want to become a dentist, you have to come out of your shell to some degree. But then when you really decide you want to grow, there's no option. So there are two things, I think. One is, self-study, self-awareness. You get better at it by watching things like this podcast or reading books and such, and you could develop that way. The other, and the fastest, I think, is just getting in situations, getting around other people who are where you want to be, and your leadership ability will just fly. So if a dentist or any business owner wants to take their business from $1 million to $5 million, go hang around people who have $5 to $10 million businesses or $100 million businesses outside of dentistry. So circle of influence and your own drive to get better at it. Even at the point where, pre-accident me, not a good leader. Post, that's all I studied. So I put a ton of intentional effort around it. And that's one of the things I put most of my energy went into. How do I lead my team at the highest level? How can I get people to want to do what I need them to do for more than the paycheck and so on, right? So you study all these things and you spend hundreds and hundreds of hours watching videos, reading books and so on, and then getting into rooms or getting around mentors who are where you want to be and substantially more so. So your circle of influence plays a big role in that too, I think.
Yeah, success leaves clues, and you're a summary of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so many dentists are stuck in their 5 best buddies from dental school who all hate dentistry and they just want to drink and they want to. There's even a thread on Dental Town there. I want to retire like now. It's like, so you want to hang out with a bunch of people that hate dentistry so much they just want to retire now? Why don't you go hang out with 5 people who are 5 dentists who are better than you at implants or business or marketing or whatever? And so when you talk, I loved your quote. I loved it. It's profound that McDonald's systems are so good. They don't have to spend $20, $30 an hour on brilliant people that can operate through chaos. Their systems are so good. They just need normal people and a normal, regular minimum wage person. So when you're looking at systems, I want to nail down on specifics. Like, what software do you recommend for a management information system, or is that not a big part of your systems?
Not a big part of it. Whatever dental practice software a person is using is fine. We don't do much in terms of actual systemization that way, not through software. We do have, so from from tracking marketing, we have custom software built out that we use for phone tracking in terms of close rates and that sort of thing. We have another system built out for case presentation follow-up. But in terms of an overall practice system, I don't use anything like that. What we recommend are...
But what software do you use in your office?
We're just using Dentrix as a management system, and that's
okay.
All.
So if some kid just walked out of dental school in the U.S. or Canada and said, what practice management software do you recommend? What would you recommend?
I've only ever worked with Dentrix since I graduated, so that's...
And they're the market leader, hands down. Now, I think that what you next said, you have your own software. I mean, when you study small business, the most important job is who answers the phone. They call it inbound sales. And who calls customers, that's outbound sales. That's the big dog. That's the man that comes to work dressed like you in a white shirt and tie. That's the highest paid people. The guys in the back making the sheet welding, those guys are wearing overalls, come with the lunch pail, and they're the $20 an hour employees. And in dentistry, it's completely reversed. The guy back there, instead of the overalls, lunch pail, that's the high paid, glorious prima donna doctor. And then the person answering the phone, there's no training, there's no phone tracking, there's no close. You ask any dentist in North America, from Mexico to Montreal, and you say, how many inbound calls did you have last month? No idea. How many of those inbound calls went to a scheduled appointment? No idea. Of those scheduled appointments, how many fillings? We're not talking about bleaching, bonding veneers, and all that crap. We're talking about decay, fillings. How many did you diagnose? How many were closed? They don't know any of that stuff. Talk about the importance of the fact that no dentist on earth wants to hear that the lady answering the phone is more important to the disease missing and filled teeth rate of their community than glorious doctor drilling, filling, and billing. I mean, she's everything, and there's no systems, no money. I mean, talk about that. Am I right or am I wrong?
In any other business, the highest paid person is the rainmaker. If you can make the phone ring, that's the highest paid job, right? And as you said, in our practices, that's often the seat that changes hands the most. It's the turnover area of the front desk, and that person's supposed to do that while handling 10 other things. It's crazy. If you know, and we do this every time we have a new client join us, and we go through the phone training, which is one of the first things that we do. Every person that joins my practice, it's one of the first things they do. If they're going to go near a phone, they have to be fully trained. And we actually have a full call center with 5 people in it now, focused entirely on outbound and inbound, and they have their exact priorities, their stats, everything we know right down to the letter. What I need them to do is to first realize exactly what their close rate is, because they have no idea. They don't know how many calls they're getting, and they don't know how many they're closing. Most people are hovering around 40 to 50%, which is brutal, because if you're spending $10,000 in marketing, half that's gone out the window. So we can get that close rate up to 90, 95%. It's not that hard. Every office we've been able to get up over 90%. You're almost doubling new patients right there. Those that come through the phone, which is still number one way, even today, that people are calling a dental office or getting in touch with a dental office. Yes, there's some Facebook, yes, there's some other digital, but phone is number one. Close rate has to be as high as possible, but then we need to figure out, I want to know, of the calls we got, how many were new patients? How many were existing patients? Of those, how many were closed? How many were not closed? And if they're not closed, I want to hear the call. And I want to break that down by team member, because if one of my team members is at a 60% close rate, everyone else is at a 90%, the person at 60, we got to yank off the phone and we got to train a bit more. I'm not saying get rid of them. I'm just saying they need some coaching. And so you know exactly where to go put your energy, put them back on the training platform, or just spend some time listening to calls and reviewing. But if you have the data, you know exactly where to put your fingers. So without data, you're flying blind.
Well, you know, most people think that McDonald's is the number one food franchise in the world. It's actually Subway. And when you go get a job at Subway, you have to go home and you have to log on to their deal, and you have to take all these online training courses. And they totally train. And then I go get a job at an endodontist office where all we do is root canals, no training. You're hired on Monday and you're thrown on the phones at 8:01, and there's just zero training. It's like everybody only cares about the foot-long tuna fish sandwich, the root canal. Nobody cares about that lady who answered the phone. So on this phone tracking software, is this your own software, or is there a software that you recommend for phone tracking, or what do you use?
So we have on our phone system, the phone system itself is part of our Academy platform, which is, there's about 12 or so programs in there. It's like the Subway equivalent in dentistry. So it's A to Z, everything that you need to know to run a high-level office. Now in there, in the phone training, part of that is, at the end of that, we install the phone system practice call tracker, which is a system we've built. And when we install that, we use tracking numbers and we populate a dashboard. Our clients can log in, they can look at their stats, they can listen to calls, everything interactive. That's something we've had built out because I wanted something specific to the way we teach, the way we operate. So that's what we use in our practice for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's what all of our clients are using right now.
That's just genius. Have you posted about this on Dentaltown?
No, I should have.
Yeah, you should start a thread. And then when we do this podcast, when it comes out on Dentaltown, you can go to like YouTube, and you know it says share and it gives you the link to the YouTube, but then the next one over is embed, and you can click that embed. And then on Dentaltown, when you make a post, there's a YouTube icon. You can click the YouTube icon and drop in the whole video. But I mean, you know, my job, I want to be a leader, and these guys are coming out of school $300,000-$400,000 in debt, and they think all the answers are in making and learning how to cook a new recipe. And if they just get their business in order and they just start cash flowing, and then you know, when you come into a town, the main thing you should be caring about is that me coming to this community will make an impact on the disease, missing and filled teeth rate in this community. And when I opened up my office, I was demoralized because Phoenix was the third largest unfluoridated city in America. And I thought, well, this is just stupid to drill, fill, and bill 5 days a week from age 25 to 75. And so I blocked off every Friday, because I was so young and dumb, I thought it'd take me like 6 weeks to get Phoenix fluoridated. It took every Friday for 2 years before Phoenix fluoridated the water, and that was the Arizona State Dental Association gave me the Arizona Award, and it felt so fulfilling because the CDC sent me and Jack Dillenberg, the dean of the dental school, a letter saying that their epidemiological models thought that the fluoridated water in Phoenix would prevent like 800,000 cavities a year. And so now you're a dentist and you go back to Parsons, Kansas, and you want to make an impact, and you don't even know how many people that called actually came in. And you said the conversion rate is 40 to 50%. You can get it to 90%. In America, all I hear is the conversion rate is about a 1 in 3. So it must be better. And so if you're seeing 40 to 50, it might be because you're in a small rural town of 70,000 where there's a lot higher trust factor than in LA and Chicago and Manhattan and whatever. But as far as same thing on the cavities diagnosed to drill, fill, and bill, it's only a third. Well, Hal, what kind of impact are you making on your community when you only drill, fill, and bill 1 out of every 3 diagnosed cavities? I mean, you could be twice as good of a doctor if you could get your conversion from 1 in 3 to 2 in 3. Oh, and not to mention double your money.
Exactly. And you've gone to the point where you've motivated a person to even call your office, because nobody misdials a dentist and asks for an appointment. You've gone through the bother of motivating this person to look you up, to dial your number, and then you didn't close them for some odd reason. And it's usually they scared the person off, they answered questions they didn't ask. There's a whole whack of reasons why. But if you could have just got that person in, build some trust and rapport, all of a sudden, there you go. You double your practice. I mean, it's not that hard. So it's just a matter of knowing your stats and doing something about it. I mean, we got statistics from coast to coast and North America wide. If it's a third, it might even, I hope it's not that bad, but I mean, what we're typically seeing is the 40-45% range. But, regardless, if you're going to get a person, because most people, we're not, because when we get patients at this level, we're not stealing them from other offices. I mean, to a degree we are, but most of them they're just not going to a dentist right now. You have to motivate this person to get off the couch, to call you, to do something proactive for their oral health. And, even as you said, as a service, I mean, just get them in the chair, right?
Well, it's two things. I think you're seeing 40 to 50% because you're in rural where there's a lot higher trust. There's a lot higher trust in rural than there is in big downtown, big city. But number two, the other bias I think you're seeing is that the dentist who get help with practice management consultants, they're already in the top 20%. Like, I see it all the time. You ask any single practice management consultant their numbers. You say, well, like, what is the average dentist in the United States collect in revenue? And they'd say, about 1.2, 1.5. It's like, are you out of your mind? We have data on that. It's 780 from people who have PhDs in economics. So why are they always saying 1.2 to 1.5? Because the people reaching out to them, that 20%, and I tell them every time I tell them, they say, well, should I go and learn how to place implants, and should I go buy a laser, and should I do Lanap? And it's like, why don't you spend half the money in Lanap on a practice management consultant and get your house in order, get poised for growth, and get rich? Then do all that stuff, because they do all that stuff thinking that if I start doing Lanap, or if I add Invisalign, or if I start placing implants, now all of a sudden my receptionist is all of a sudden going to magically learn how to answer the call and convert twice as many people to be scheduled, and then we're going to be able to present treatment and double our. I mean, it's like, how does that happen?
It's easier to swipe the credit card to take another course than it is to realize that you need to sit down with Mary at the desk and train. And that's a whole thing. I don't even know where to start, but I know how to take a course, right? So this is, I think, what happens. And I mean, I spent my first 5 years in practice, I did 1,000 hours of CE. And I took every continuum out there. I learned how to do just about everything you can do in dentistry. And it was great, except that I wish the first thing I did was learn how to be profitable. and then add all this other stuff on top, because you can create tiers in the practice. You can create practice within a practice. You can do high end as the owner doctor, all that sort of stuff. You can, shake this out any way you want, but no profit means you're not even staying in the game. And you're right. I mean, I think that is very much the average 700,000, 800,000. And when we get people who reach out to us in that range, we put them in a certain level of the program where they're not going to be spending anywhere near what someone in the top level would make, but it at least exposes them to the mindset and the thinking of where they should be at that level before they can, they're never going to grow past that if we don't get some of those mindset shifts in place.
I think some of it also might be pride. I think that a lot of dentists are very, very, I think a lot of them are pride. They want everybody to think I'm a really smart doctor. I'm all this in a bag of chips, and they really don't want someone to come in and find out that, oh my God, this place is crazy. You don't have any sense. They don't want. I mean, think about a dentist in dental school. If they got a test back and there were 40 questions and they missed 10 of them, they'd feel horrible. I don't think a lot of them. I think the people who are the most successful are humble. They're the ones that can raise their hand and say, I need help. Look at how much more successful women are than men because women get help. Remember when I was little, they thought that TMJ was mostly a female issue. So everybody was studying estrogen. Like, how does estrogen affect TMJ? And then they found out through epidemiological models that there was no difference between men and women. It's just that the women raised their hand and said, hey, I have horrible migraines, and they go to get help. And that's one of the largest reasons of why the average woman lives 5 years longer than the average man is because men just don't want to get help. So you got a lot of men that own their office. They have a lot of pride. They got big egos, and they really don't want to call Carlos Biasucci and for him to come in and say, dude, there's 40 questions on this test and you missed half of them. So I think pride's a big issue. Do you, or not really?
It is. I mean, I was there myself, and that pre-accident me, not very humble, big ego. Post, very, very different game. Again, realizing how big the gap was when you start to, previously I did what I think all of us do in the profession at that level is I went and took a ton of courses. That's all I knew was I put myself in a room with other dentists. You talk to other dentists and, numbers come up and that sort of thing. And well, if you have kind of the biggest practice in the room, you feel like, oh, I know it all. Post-accident, one of the first things I did was I went out and I got a lot of mentors. I hired consultants. I did a lot of those things that I wouldn't have done previously. And I put myself intentionally in rooms where people were running businesses, not dental practices, in the 50 to 100 million range. Because I want to know what's inside their head. And I'll tell you, when you do that, you become very humble very quickly. You realize how much you don't know. And you realize how much that even these folks rely on outside help. They wouldn't think twice to hire someone to come in and show them everything to do, right? Because it's speed to success, right? You just compress the learning curve by bringing in outside help. And so that's, if I could impress on people that the importance of doing that is just getting out of your own way, letting someone just show you the fast path, and then you can do it. But spending all this time in school and then you build a practice, and you really have jumped through a lot of hoops to get to the point where you can even, hold the drill legally. I know what that feels like, and it's like at this point, there's some deserve level when people start, right? And that there's no deserve in business. It doesn't exist, right? You have to earn every day, and that's the end of it. So getting into that space where you realize that it's just much faster and easier if I get some help with this and get 100 on the test next day. It's but we get in our own way. You're exactly right.
And that's why I say it's pride and it's not sloth. I mean, the 7 deadly sins are lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, pride. I mean, you can't become a doctor and have a sloth problem. You're not lazy. You're not dumb. You're not, I mean, if you become a doctor, I mean, in the United States, a dentist, physician, lawyer, they're all in the top 5% income. And it's that way in almost every country around the world, whether you're a developing nation or a rich in the G20. They're not lazy. They're not dumb. I mean, that's why I love my business the most, because all my homies are dentists. They're all readers. They're all smart people. I mean, these threads on Dental Town, you can't post any single case, concept, thought, and some dentist will say something where I'm like, wow, I never even thought of it that way. I mean, they're just so smart. So it's not a dumb issue. It's just a pride issue. And it's a misallocation of resources. I mean, like I say, if you double your conversion rate, you just double the increase your marketing. I've always said the worst business to go into is marketing for new patients for dentists, because you could get an A on what you do, and then they drop every call coming in. So I want to go back to marketing, because what do you mean by, when we're selling the invisible? I mean, I know this is the bottled water. I know what Folgers coffee is. I know what an iPhone is. But when you tell someone they have 4 cavities, they have to trust you. How do you add trusted authority to your marketing?
Yeah, so that's probably the most important thing to build. If you don't have that status, then everyone in your community or everyone around you on your block or whatever is equal in the patient's eyes. And while our regulatory bodies want us to think that's what they want the public to believe, is a dentist is a dentist is a dentist, I believe, and it's, I mean, obviously, if you can set yourself out as a category of 1, it's just that much easier for you. You start case acceptance before they even call. So one of the things that I've done for several years now, many years, is I'm the only dentist in my market that has written multiple books, 20 some odd free reports. We host webinars, we host seminars, we have all kinds of information pushed out to the public, publish newsletters, all kinds of stuff online. We're very active. We're probably the 10x Facebook following of anybody else around us. And all of that is designed not to say we're better. It's just to put out information about what your practice is, who you are, where you came from, things that our regulators can't say anything about because it's good information. But when a person comes to you for a cosmetic consultation, implant consultation, Invisalign, whatever, and they leave with this box of stuff, your books, your reports, all this information about you, even if they never open the cover, they never read it, and then they go get a second opinion from the person who maybe gives them an Invisalign flyer, there's a huge difference in the patient's eyes as who's the expert here. And that's how we set that up. I don't like coupons, discount marketing, any of that stuff. None of my ads have free anything or limited time off, whatever. It's always get my free book, request my information kit, all this sort of stuff, right? And so we build all that out for our clients, and within a year or two, this stuff really starts to snowball. And you see what happens is now this person is the authority because they're the person who's pushing out the information, the person who's pushing out the content. You do the same thing online. You get active on Facebook, you get active on YouTube, and next thing you know, you're starting to get the media requests. People are coming to you for interviews, and all these sorts of things happen. And when I'm still just a dentist, my skill set is very equal to majority of dentists out there, but I'm perceived here at a very different level, and that's strategically built. So that's what I mean by authority platform, and there's many examples I could give, but that's the strategy.
You know what's amazing is we talked about Southwest Airlines, earlier, #1 airline, 27% of all sea miles. I've had so many dentists come on this show, and they were discussing, like, say, dental implants, or they were cosmetic dentistry or whatever, and they've emailed me back. They said, dude, that you put that on YouTube. I've gotten so many patients from that, because here they were, a dentist in New Jersey doing implants, and then they're saying that this guy's being interviewed on this national show. And then what surprised them the most is how many people were actually flying in to see them. And then when I look at websites, the people want to see their own work. Like if I had to have, say I had to have a facelift, and I go to your website and there's none of your before and after work. And then I go to another guy's website and he's got 10 or 15, and they say, these are Dr. Carlos Biasucci's work. These were done by him himself and his pages. Those are the people that are getting patients to jump in an airplane and fly across. And I was talking to a dentist friend of mine in Kansas City, and he felt so bad because he was doing this big implant case, and the guy flew in, I think it was from Fort Scott, Kansas, and the guy actually knows a guy in Fort Scott, Kansas, who's just crushing it, and the diplomat in the International Congress of Oral Implantology. And he says, dude, if you go to his website, he doesn't have one phone before and after case, but when this guy comes and lectures to your study club, he shows 20 cases, and they're not even on his website. It's like crazy. I'm gonna go back to on the website deal. 168 hours in a week. When your software is recording this phone conversation, how big do you need to open that funnel? Is that a big factor? I mean, most dentists answer their phone 8 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and most of the research I see, that's only when about 50% of the incoming calls come in, which is 32 hours a week, which is 19% of the 168 hours a week, and the other half are coming in, the other 81% of the hours. How important is it to open that funnel to answering live calls? Like if you're open 8 to 5, well, right now, when I drive into work, the freeways are packed from about 7 to 8. So is that when they're calling and you should be answering the phone, or does that not really matter?
Yeah, market wants 7 to 7. And they're reasonable about it being
7 to 7 answering the phone, or 7 to 7 answering the phone and making the pizza and the root canals?
I think you can be open, 8:30 to 5:30 kind of thing. I mean, we run 8 to 6 here, but answering the phone 7 to 7, 6 days a week is what the market wants.
Bingo. Absolutely.
And it's really easy to do that. I mean, very simply, you just get a cell phone, you pay a staff member, and that's that. We still pick up at least, we bump 50% new patients from those calls. Most people are going to call you at 5:30. Or 6 o'clock. That's just because they just got home. They just remembered. If you don't, and all they have to do is say, hey, yeah, come on in tomorrow morning at whatever time, because they have 2 times on a piece of paper they're left with. It's that easy. If it's an emergency, see you at 8. That's simple. If you have the systems ready.
Well, I know how my homies think. They're going to think, well, won't they just leave a message and we'll call them back at 8?
No, statistics on that are terrible.
Nobody
leaves a message. Nobody calls back. It's like 80% of people will not call back. 84%, I believe, is the current statistic.
Yeah, humans only talk to humans and mostly dogs that secrete the same levels of oxytocin and dopamine. I call it the scream factor. Like nobody wants to eat a dog or a puppy because it would cry when you killed him, but when you kill a salmon, it doesn't scream. No one cares. They talk to humans and dogs, and if you're crazy, cats, which is my favorite animal. But they don't talk to answer machines. And if you see someone talking to an answer machine, that should be the same thing as if you walk through the park and see someone talking to a tree. I mean, something's wrong when you're talking to a tree or an answer machine. They just don't do it. There's no stats to do it. So if they answered the phone 7 to 7. I mean, that would just be a huge game changer, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, just in itself. So if somebody's watching this and you want to take one thing away to do immediately, just answer the phone. Just cover the phone. 7 to 7, 6 days a week. Get a cell phone, give it to a staff member, pay him for it, and there you go.
So So if someone had to say to you, what is better? If you had to get an A in one area and a C in the other, would you rather have an A in marketing and a C on phones? Or would you rather have an A on phones and a C in marketing?
You got to crush the phone. Conversion on the phone is huge. You can blow all kinds of money in marketing and not convert. It's very simple. I mean, it's the easiest to do, the most profitable thing to touch, because you're spending zero money and you're getting revenue out of it. Absolutely hands down.
Heartland Dental has over 950 offices. They just got bought up by KKR, and Rick Workman said on this show that their call center, it's their secret sauce. I mean, he's telling his homies, look, here's how we're beating you. We answer the phone, but they take it a step further. When they answer that phone 7 to 7, that lady can dial in and schedule an appointment. So if Carlos Biacucci calls up and says, and Rick says it's bizarre, like people will call like 7 p.m. on a Friday night. But they'll convert right there. They're like, oh yeah, when would you like to come in? And so these guys are, because I think I want all the DSO guys to come on here, because I think competition is good for any industry. I mean, you have the dentist, and of course the dentists, if they all had it their way, they do one crown on Monday from 8 to 9 and charge $1 million, and dental insurance would pay for it all. If the patient had it their way, all dentistry would be free and paid for by Bernie Sanders. And if the insurance companies had it their way, away, we'd all be on a PPO and they'd lower our fees 5% every year. So, you know, there's many stakeholders in this game, but I think what's best for the patient is competition. And I think whenever a country has free trade, and like I think most PhD economists would wipe out every trade deal on the planet today. Instead of having all these games and rules, let's just make it free trade. And then everybody that buys a lobbyist in DC is trying to restrict trade. They don't want competition. So I think DSOs are healthy. I think when they come into a market, they make dentists pay attention to the business side of dentistry than just on the preparing the dentistry.
Exactly. It wakes everybody up, shakes up the market a little bit, but they're not this giant that can't be beat. So everyone you can no longer just rely on what's always been working, but it's not difficult to beat them. Absolutely not. The competition is healthy.
Yeah, and when you do beat them, I mean, I'm not even that impressed because number one, they can't even go public. Number two, anybody that practices across the room DSOs routinely gets to do second opinions on these big $5,000 cases when they find that, you know, they're very aggressive treatment planners. So that's not even. So I can't believe we went over an hour, dude. I could talk to you all day. Your website is theelitepractice.com. What are my homies going to find if they go to theelitepractice.com?
First thing you see at the top of the page is a form to get my book for free, the Elite Practice Formula. Just follow the form, fill it out. We'll send you a copy of the book, and check out what we're about. Yeah, there's more information on there about what we do, some client feedback and that sort of thing. But if you start with the book, get a read about what we're about and what we do, that's a great start.
And you can also buy it on Amazon too?
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon, Kindle version. There's an audio book, so you can...
Oh, okay, so on Amazon, it's still just a digital version?
Amazon's got Kindle. They've got the printed version. I believe there's an Audible version as well.
But the free copy on your website, is that a digital version, or you can get an actual book?
Yeah, no, the actual printed copy. This guy's coming to you.
Nice, because I hate to say this because it's a slam on me, but I'm 56. I want to hold a book, and I've tried to do that digital thing, and I try to do that, but I don't know. I've read 1,000 books, and I just love to sit in my chair, and usually it's on an airplane, and read the book. But hey, I just want to tell you that the only reason this show is a success is because I'm able to get people like you to come on. Thank you so much for spending an hour of your valuable life on my show, talking to my homies. Thank you so much for coming on today.
And thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
And start a thread, and if you're shy on Dental Town, say, I just finished a podcast with Howard, and he told me to talk about this. But again, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I hope you have a rockin' hot day.
Awesome. Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.